All right, welcome back. I just want to talk about the Colorado Avalanche. They're off to an 0-4 start. Keep this with a grain of salt. I've only watched one Avalanche game, and that was last night against the Boston Bruins in Colorado. So I'm going to dive through this real quick. We're going to go player by player, but first, you can't talk about the Avalanche without talking about their system. This is a team for several years, including their Stanley Cup win, who has won games by playing offense and keeping the puck out of their defensive zone in general. They play defense by playing offense, and it works. And it works really well when you have a team that buys into positional coverage, when you have a team that buys into playing team defense, right? And it's worked really well. They are absolutely fantastic at carrying the puck and holding it in the opposing team zone. It's absolutely incredible. But with that being said, you can't talk about the 0-4 start without talking about who's out. Now, Landeskog, we know, is nearing a return. He is a very, very good player, a top six forward at the least. Great 200-foot player, physical. The captain, right? That might help some leadership in the locker room. He's been out for a while. We don't know, but you can throw that away because we knew he was going to be out. Nichushkin suspended, knew he was going to be out. Nichushkin, physical, very talented forward as well. Plays offense, has really come into his own defensively the past couple of years. He's a good player, man. There's no question about that. Arturi Lehkonen, second line winger at this point, probably would see some first line minutes on this roster right now because of the injuries. We'll see. Lehkonen is a player that has a high ceiling. I still believe that. He showed a lot of his talent when he was still in Montreal, and he was really good. I know he's been kind of up and down in Colorado, and part of it, I think, is just the adjustment to the system, right? He has to cycle back and be a defenseman at times. He didn't necessarily have to do that when he was in Montreal, and I think your offense suffers as a result, but your defensive game can grow, and you're playing more as a team. And right, there's pros and cons. It doesn't really matter. Lehkonen, nonetheless, is a guy that can put the puck in the net, is a guy that can play make and pass to the slot and get a goal out of it. They traded for Tucker Poolman. They knew he was going to be on LTIR all season. Forget about Tucker Poolman. Third line pairing guy. Jonathan Drouin is one of those guys that can slot in next to McKinnon and not really look out of place. He came in strong last year. Is he a big difference maker? Not necessarily. But he's one of those guys that can help produce points and make a line stronger, especially like a McKinnon line, for example. So they're missing him. But the biggest loss, in my opinion, is Devon Taves. Devon Taves is so good. He's fantastic in the offensive zone. He's fantastic in his own defensive zone. And he can play physical. He can play finesse. He's very, very versatile. You can have him do whatever you need him to do, and he's going to be excellent at it. I'm not the biggest Devon Taves fan, but man, that guy is so good. And honestly, like, I know we hear it all the time, but I think I still think he's a bit underrated. I think he's one of the best two-way defensemen in the entire league, and I don't think there's a question about that. If you watch him play, like, it's hard to deny just how fantastic this dude is. Keep in mind, he doesn't get a ton of power play time because Cale Makar kind of spearheads that power play's first unit. And should Devon Taves take over a power play, that this guy would be in Norris contention every single year. Miles Wood got injured last night off of a hit from Carlo. The broadcast I was watching said it was cross-check, and it could have been a cross-check, but we only got to see one angle, and it could have not been a cross-check. It could have been like a butt, like the stick butt. Could have just been like maybe like a punch. I think it was Miles Wood. Whoever it was, it looked like they just had the wind knocked out of them. He's a game-time decision for the next game. But we're going to fly through this. Miles Wood, this was last night's roster, essentially. Miles Wood playing on that first line wing. Miles Wood is great and explosive. Let me start over. Miles Wood can be explosive at times throughout any given game, and he was last night. He's other than that, he tends to kind of disappear from the offensive zone. He's good defensively for the most part. He can play a physical, gritty style. He can play a finesse, skill-based style at times. But yeah, he's a bottom six forward at this point, and that's probably where he should be in the lineup. But again, with these injuries, you have to elevate some of these guys into your top six roles because you don't really have any other options. Nathan MacKinnon by far was the best player on the ice, playing a complete 200-foot game, played defense, played offense, was setting people up for beautiful scoring attempts, was shooting and really, really close to getting a bunch of goals last night, missing by like inches. Just missing his shots, just enough to miss, but man, that dude he's so good. And usually we see a little more physicality from MacKinnon than we saw last night. But I don't think he needed to play necessarily physical last night. I thought he did what he needed to do, and he adjusted his game, and he looked excellent doing it. He was just stick handling around defensemen like they're playing Pee-wee or something. He was so good. By far, for both teams, best player on the ice, Nathan MacKinnon last night. Logan O'Connor, I thought was fine. Did some things in the offensive zone I thought were okay. Had a giveaway or two. Like, whatever. Ross Colton, I thought, played a pretty strong game in general. Again, once you really... I mean, the forward group really spent a lot of time in their own defensive zone throughout this game. More than I'd say a usual Avalanche, a healthy Avalanche team would, which really isn't anything groundbreaking or like a surprise. But Ross Colton, I thought, played pretty well. Middlestat kind of had a rough night. I thought he made some good plays, both in the offensive and defensive zone at times, but he was also a liability at times in the defensive zone. Could not win a face-off for the life of him. He was not good in the face-off circle last night. Might have just been an off night for Middlestat. This is a guy who is a pretty solid second-line center, in my opinion. I've watched him a few times, and he's legit. He's good. I think it was a great pickup for Colorado. It just wasn't necessarily there last night. Rantanen was also excellent last night, playing a 200-foot game. Really got a deadly shot. Nice passing in the offensive zone. Coming back, playing defense. He's a big body, using his body, playing physical hockey. The Bruins did a nice job of getting under Rantanen's skin. And if you're going to get under anyone's skin on this Colorado team, it's Rantanen. He gets caught in the heat of the moment and, kind of gets filled with rage for like a couple minutes or so. And then he evens out, and he's still able to play his game, which I think is nice on Rantanen's part, that he's able to rebound so quickly and really stick to his game and still be an effective player regardless of what's going on the ice. Rantanen was very good. We saw Rantanen and MacKinnon play together at times last night, and that line, when they play together, it's a tough line to stop. Kovalenko, I thought, was pretty good. Made some scoring chances happen. Moved the puck around all right. Had a few defensive plays that were nice and had a few sketchy defensive plays as well. Parker Kelly, I thought, was fine. Third line center, yeah. He looked the part last night. He wasn't like mind-blowing, but he also wasn't bad. He played pretty well in his own zone as well. Caleb Ritchie, I thought, played very well. Kid's 19? Did not look out of place by any means. That kid's got a bright future. Kid looks good and he's young. Give him some experience, he'll be all right. Ivan, I thought, looked fantastic. Definitely like a fourth line guy, but showed some explosiveness. Broke out into the offensive zone on more than one occasion. Would hustle back, play good positional defense when he needed to. I thought he had a strong game. Steinberg as well, I thought, had an excellent game. He drew a slashing call from Zadorov when he hit. I think he hit. Oh, I forget. Maybe it was Brad Marchand. It might have been Pasternak. I don't know. Steinberg went for a hit on a Bruins player, and it is what it is. There's no penalty called on the play. Zadorov slashed him, and then they fought. So Colorado had a power play out of that. and Steinberg and Zadorov were both in the penalty box. It's a great trade-off for Colorado. Fourth line center for a top four defenseman, big guy, physical guy who kills penalties. And that was really a momentum changer, one of the main momentum changers throughout the game. Then Colorado started to come back and chip away at the lead, and all of a sudden it's 4-3, and that started with Steinberg, and he played pretty well throughout the entire game. He had a couple scoring chances. This kid looked good last night. Kivi Ranta I thought was fine. I didn't really notice him a whole lot. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't really looking at Kivi Ranta most of the game. I was looking at Ivan and Steinberg when that fourth line was on the ice. I was paying a lot of attention to the defense throughout the game to see how they would respond to having to play a little more defense. Let's talk about the defense. Now, Shillington had a rough game last night. Shillington isn't as bad as his play would tell you it is last night. Like he's okay. Like he's not a bad player, but he's one of those guys that needs to be a little more offensively minded than defensively. At least from what I've seen in his time in Calgary and Colorado. He's got to be involved somewhat in the offense to really be engaged, and it is what it is. As a result, we saw Shillington in the defensive zone kind of drift away positionally, and Makar had to play solid positional defense, and I think he knew that without Devon Taves there. And Makar was fine, but he's not a defensive defenseman by any means. There were times where he should have tied up sticks on shots to avoid deflections, and it didn't happen. Times he should have cleared out the defensive player or the offensive forward from the crease, and he didn't. There were times where he probably, there was a puck in the slot, and like you either got to clear out the opposing forward or clear the puck out, and it wasn't there. And this is stuff that Devon Taves usually does, and he's absolutely fantastic at it. So that's tough. And Makar is one of those players that plays defense by playing offense. And we saw him later in the game starting to drive into that offensive zone a lot more and really make some incredible offensive scoring chances for the Avalanche last night. But as a result, it leaves some of your defense exposed, right? You have Shillington back there. And there were times where Shillington would also kind of be lost in the offensive zone with Makar, and you'd have guys like Kovalenko and Parker Kelly back playing defense, and Caleb Ritchie is the third guy back. Like it's not necessarily setting your defense and your goaltender up for success. And we saw a lot of that last night, and that's not typically out of characteristic for a Colorado Avalanche team, but you usually have a guy like Devon Taves back first. You usually have a guy like Josh Manson who's back first. That's where I'm going to stop. But you also have forwards like Landeskog, like Nichushkin, like Lehkonen, who has the speed to get back and is serviceable to play defense. You're missing some of those guys to come back and kind of help with your lost defenseman who's drove into the offensive zone, and you need to help the defensive coverage as a forward. So the first line was a mess, right? The second line I thought was fine. Gerard was fine. I thought Manson was very good. Manson had a pretty typical game for him, which is very good. He's very physical. He had a nice hit on Marchand, and I'm a Bruins fan. And it injured Marchand, and it was a little unnecessary and aggressive, but at the same time, that's Josh Manson's game. Like you're getting hit by this guy, you kind of should know what to expect. Manson was very effective. He's also very good with the stick last night, getting in those passing lanes. He broke up a one-on-one. Pavel Zacha, the Bruins, was alone with the puck in front of Georgiev, and out of desperation, you just see Josh Manson's stick come and break up the play and take the puck off of Zacha's stick, and it was outstanding. Manson's a very good defensive defenseman. Calvin DeHaan had a rough night last night, just no way about it. I don't think his head was in the game at all. Consistently out of position, just I don't know what he was doing. It was not his night. Malinsky had some good shifts and had some pretty awful shifts. Malinsky was usually in position, but would be caught out of position every once in a while. And the Bruins were good at recognizing when defensemen were out of position and attempting to capitalize on that, especially the fourth line of the Bruins. They see defensemen coming up to the faceoff dot. They're getting forwards in and crashing the net, and it worked. So, yeah, it's one of those things where this team has to adjust how to play defense with some of their key guys out of the roster. You have to really change up your style if you're not going to have those skill guys in your roster that usually drive your offense and your defense. So we're seeing a lot more pressure on the defensemen. We're seeing still quite a bit of pressure on the forwards, if not a little more pressure on the forwards to get back and play defense. And as a result, we saw the Colorado Avalanche really struggle with 5-on-5 offense. Power play, they were good. I think they were 3 for 3. Maybe they had 4 chances. They scored 3 power play goals, and their power play was fantastic. But again, that's because you have the puck in the offensive zone. You don't have to really worry about playing defense. Their offense is fine when you're focusing on offense, but when you're focusing on offense and worrying about positioning on defense so you don't give up big breakaways, that's when your offense begins to suffer. And it is what it is. This obviously isn't a permanent thing, but I do feel bad for Georgiev, and I don't think Georgiev is one of the top 10 goaltenders in the league. I really don't. I haven't. But but I think he's getting too much flack for his stats and how many goals have gone in. He was left high and dry on way too many occasions last night. You have 3 or 4 Colorado Avalanche guys right in front of your goaltender, right? And you have a Bruins forward right in the middle, and the puck is loose. And every time that Bruins forward is able to get the puck and occasionally score. I think they scored 2 goals like that last night, which was not good. As a player playing defense, you either want to move the body, move the Bruins player physically out of the way, or tie up their stick, or at least touch the puck. And there was not a whole lot of effort on the defensive end in front of Georgiev. A lot of the entire team, if the Bruins players were crashing the net and then hanging out in the crease, there was no effort to really move those Bruin players away from Georgiev. I felt bad for him. I thought he was left high and dry, and I don't think he played all that poorly. He made some fantastic saves on breakaways. I think he let in a soft goal last night, but I thought he was much better than Korpisalo was last night, if I'm being honest. And again, I'm a Bruins fan, and I have high hopes for Korpisalo. I think he's going to be decent this year. I was ambitious and said he would have at least a 9-10 save percentage at the end of the year, and I don't know anymore. We're only at game 2, but for Korpisalo, but yeah. But I feel bad for Georgiev, honestly. I think he's a better goaltender than his stats would, and I think he's played better than his stats would indicate. But I think the systems, once you lose some of these key guys, the systems really start to break down. I do want to give a lot of credit to the coach, Jared Bednar. I am not a Jared Bednar fan by any means, but man, that dude is an excellent coach. His line combinations, when he would switch up lines, his game plans, his line matchups, his systems, his understanding of the game, and reviewable calls and such was just out of this world last night. I think he was the best coach on the ice last night, or in the arena last night. I don't know, not including like coaches in the stands or whatever, but he was absolutely coaching his mind out, and he just looked very calm and serene and almost defeated on the bench at the same time. But this guy expects a lot from his players and his team. They expect to win every night, and if they're down, they expect to come back. And I think honestly, there's only so much you can do with some of your key guys out. Having Devon Taves out, I can't stress it enough, really, really hurts. That is a guy who will play over 20 minutes a night, a third of the game, and provide you with a lot of stability in your own defensive zones. You can have guys like Cale Makar drive up into the zone with like a Mikko Rantanen and Middlestat and really produce some offense and not really worry as much about getting back to play defense and positional defensing. You can have a few more guys in front of the opposing goalie and in the crease, and create better scoring chances, which usually lead to goals, um, rather than worrying about your defense. So I think the subtraction of Devon Taves is hurting this team quite a bit. But I think some of these forwards as well are also kind of, they need to get back in the game and play if Colorado wants to turn it around. Because the way they're playing right now, it's not great, and it's not. I don't want to say it's due to lack of effort, although it kind of is on the defensive end, minus Manson and Gerard, and I guess Makar. But again, we saw Makar take away the puck a few times in his own defensive zone and then give the puck right back to the Bruins, and get by Makar for a potential scoring chance. Again, I don't think Makar played poor defense by any means, but I think that's about as good of last night's defensive performance from Makar is about as good as what you can expect from Makar in his defensive zone when he's forced to play defense. It's not the first time he's had to play a lot of defense more than he would like to, and we usually see the same result. And it's not bad. He's serviceable, but he's not an elite defensive defenseman by any means. He's an offensive defenseman and one of the best offensive defensemen in the game, and there's no doubt about that. He is so good. And I'll say it again. I'll forever say it. Playing offense is a form of playing defense. You're keeping the puck in the offensive zone away from your goaltender, as far away from your goaltender as you can. Keeping the puck away from your goaltender avoids getting goals against, right? Even with neutral zone play, rarely, but sometimes you'll see a puck go in from behind the blue line. For example, it's a very low percentage shot, but every now and then we see it. Dennis Seidenberg on the Boston Bruins, a defensive defenseman who's got a nice shot, but not a goal scorer by any means. Scored one from the red line once. So it happens. We've seen it happen since. It's just not common, but you really don't see goals against happen from the other side of the ice when your team's goaltender is in net. So yeah, it's. I think things will turn around. McKinnon looks fantastic. It looks like he's in playoff form already. Rantanen looks solid. You want, I guess, a little more scoring, but at the same time, I don't even know. I think he scored a goal last night. He definitely scored a goal last night. I think he has 4 goals in 4 games. But you feel like there's a little more scoring there with Rantanen, even though he's scoring at a goal per game pace, which is absurd. You feel like, I don't know, him and McKinnon, I think, really could have. Both of them were really close on scoring several times, both of them. So, they could have had a few goals each. Unfortunately for the Avalanche, it didn't turn out that way, which happens. It's hockey, it's a game. But yeah, that's just me talking about the Avalanche game from last night. My takeaways. I think I got a minimum of 6. Yeah, so five more Avalanche games I'll watch throughout the year. I'll probably pick up another Avalanche game at some point, at least one game, as I do usually for every team. So, it's only game 4. Avalanche fans can relax. I think once they get some of these guys back, they're going to be absolutely rolling and one of the best teams in hockey. Especially if Landeskog comes back, you get Devon Taves back, Drouin. And, even Lehkonen, if Nichushkin is out, I mean, obviously that hurts, but I think this team really starts rolling. It's a good roster, and unfortunately there's a lot of injuries right now. This is one of those times where the team has to battle through it and, kind of come away with some points and wait for the guys to get healthy and at least remain somewhat in contention, although, again, it's only game 4. So that's all I got. I appreciate you. Take care, all right?